And don't forget, football fans, Syracuse Orange in action on WBBZ-TV this Saturday at Georgia Tech. This will be a tough one. Game time, 12:30. The Orangemen on Buffalo's Buzz. Now we're back with All Sports West New York, and I've got Bud Bailey, longtime writer with the Buffalo News, and I told Bud before the show, that's what we say when we refer to guys our age, Bud. We've been around a while.
We go back a few years, don't we?
Yeah, back in the day. And you've got a great book, a great new book called Today in Buffalo Sports History, 366 Days of Milestones. And, you know, I looked through it just briefly as we're sitting here. And you did this in conjunction with the Buffalo News, we're talking, right?
Right. I had done a series for 2 years picking out highlights of each specific day, although leap year didn't happen to fall in that, so I had to add that later. But I had all sorts of notes from it, and I rewrote everything that was in it, and we suddenly said, hey, this is a book.
And this will be, you know, let me get it out of the way now. This will be a great stocking stuffer for Christmas. And it's really cool because if you're, you know, I mean, you have every single day of the year, and then on that day you picked a significant event that happened on that day. And what I enjoy about this so much, and I'm going to share a quick little story. Back in the day when I was working at another local TV station doing sports, I started doing once a week, I would do what I called a not-so-instant replay, where I'd look back like through our tape library 10 or 5 years ago and see what happened on that day. And there was a TV critic for the Buffalo News by the name of Alan Pergament, who wrote that it was a waste of airtime. But I thought it was fun to look at, and so I love this stuff. So you go through every day, and luckily you've got the archives of the Buffalo News at your fingertips, more or less.
And as well as every other source I could think of.
Well, and it had to be just hours and hours and hours of research and trying to pick out the events that you wanted to use.
It was, but it was a lot of fun along the way, Bob, and I think that's the key thing. I tried to make it as much fun as possible. I mean, I went through the Greater Buffalo Sports Hall of Fame inductees and said, all right, looked them up and did Google searches and found out that a speed skater had performed at Delaware Park in the 1930s before 10,000 people, including Jack Dempsey, who happened to be in town. Dempsey fought in Buffalo, Floyd Patterson, Roberto Duran, Joe Louis. This area has had an awful lot of sports in 150 years, so it was really fun to go back and hit some of the highlights. You can't obviously hit everything.
Well, so you're going through, I mean, are there days where you have more than one highlight?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I have notes. Some days you just have a lot of things going on, and some days less. For example, April 14th, I believe, was the last Sabres home game in Memorial Auditorium. It was also the first game for the Bisons in Pilot Field. Now, obviously, you could write paragraphs and paragraphs about either of them. I can only pick one to highlight. So I went with the Sabres because it was a more nostalgic moment and the end of an era, if you will, while the Bisons were just getting going in their new stadium. Now,
and you said, excuse me, this was a big week, date-wise, in Buffalo sports history.
October 15th is the anniversary of the first Sabres game. They didn't score in that game either, which has been kind of a thread here in October for this edition of the Sabres. On October 16th, I believe, was the first big event at War Memorial Stadium, which was a college football game. Colgate and Tulane played to open up the building. And then a couple days later, an expansion franchise in the American Football League was granted to Ralph Wilson in Buffalo. Now, at the time, Buffalo had some failures in pro football. We didn't think we didn't know what would happen. And sure enough, I think it turned into the most significant day in Buffalo sports history. For Buffalo to be in the National Football League and everything that comes with it is a benefit to the community that's still paying dividends more than 50 years later.
So how is this archived at the Buffalo News? Is it archived by date, specific date?
We have an electronic library that goes back to 1989, and you can do all sorts of computer searches just like a Google search. Beyond that, I went through and did computer searches just like anybody else would, looking for specific information. I started with media guides from the 4 teams and the colleges, and you go through trades and player acquisitions of other sorts, free agent signings and big games, playoff games. And the idea came from my former boss, Steve Jones, who was the executive sports editor, wanted something to be on the internet every day. And I said, you know, the first 200 are really easy, but those last 50 are going to be hard. And the more you dig into it, I'd read something along the way and just said, wow, that's really interesting. I didn't know that the first baseball player to ever try and jump teams and file a lawsuit on an antitrust basis wanted to come to Buffalo in 1914, a guy named Hal Chase, better known as maybe the Yankees' first superstar in 1905, 1910, in that era. So just a lot of things came up here. You know, we forget Buffalo had Major League Baseball in the 1880s, and the first 300-game hitter, Pud Galvin, pitched in Buffalo. Dan Brothers, who was really the Mickey Mantle of the 1880s, played all his time here. They had 4 Hall of Famers on that team. So there's a lot of history that comes there. The first guy to ever hit for the cycle in Major League Baseball did it as a Buffalo Bison.
Wow.
So it's amazing how much history there has been in 150 years.
What would you call maybe one of the most obscure events that actually took place in Buffalo but is also interesting?
A couple of things come to mind. I didn't know Tonawanda had a National Football League team.
Oh, I didn't
One
know that.
game, I think it was 1924, the Tonawanda Cardex was kind of a business sort, and the scheduling in the NFL back then was just very haphazard. And somehow Tonawanda got admission for one game, got clobbered, and the owner said, enough of this, and folded right on the spot. Another one, when the American League was forming in 1900, it was a mostly group of Midwestern cities, and Buffalo was supposed to be included. The president of the American League, a guy named Ban Johnson, wanted a team in Boston, so he took Buffalo's team and put it in Boston. That team is now known as the Red Sox.
Wow.
So technically, that's our team.
I never knew that. Wow. And I'm a Red Sox fan.
Yeah, me too.
Now I know maybe why they broke my heart for the first 80 years of
That's right.
last century. We're going to be back more with Bud Bailey. I don't want you to forget, where can they find these, Bud?
Fine bookstores everywhere.
Fine bookstores
and
everywhere.
BuffaloBooks.com also
Okay.
has it.
Yeah, it's great for if you're a Buffalo sports fan, if you want to pick this up for the holidays. We'll be back more with Bud right after this.